In this video, we're going to take a look at a blue ink by Platinum Blue. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, it really does help me if you check out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the blue ink playlist, so if you want to see more, you'll be able to check that out there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shading in the stub, tons of shading in the extra fine and in the medium. The extra fine took 13 seconds to dry, the medium took 18. Scrubby for both, show some color variation. We definitely get it in the writing, and the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, and Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Now, before we get to the next part, you're going to see a notebook change, because at this point, I'm now using a Lamy notebook, which has weird lines for me. Then, I inked up a Platinum 3776 with a broad nib, used it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen. We get some light shading in the stub, not too bad a shading in the extra fine. Even some shading in the medium. Surprising I got it here, but not the Clairfontaine. The extra fine's a lot lighter than the stub, and the medium's about the same tone as the extra fine. Extra fine took 16 seconds to dry, medium took 24. Scrubby for both do show a little color variation left to right. We do get it in the writing, and the smear test, I don't think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Sorry. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this very dark blue on the bottom, very evenly pushing its way up, and a bright turquoise at the top. Now that's where we're getting our shading from. I frequently see that turquoise in a lot of very shading inks. The one on the right that's allowed to dry for 10 minutes, a lot of that blue has very much stayed down in the line. Now, not perfectly in the line, but really stayed down below, starting to form a bond with this paper. They're becoming life mates here. It does suggest that you may get a bit of resistance from this ink. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shading in the stub, decent shading shows up in the extra fine, better shading shows up in the medium. The extra fine took 13 seconds to dry while the medium took 18, and the scrubby for both do show some color variation. Not a ton in the extra fine, but it's there, or sorry, in the medium, but it's there. Much better in the writing. Smear test says you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I think you would be very safe using it in a note-taking situation. It's really not budging, and I actually think it looks a little bit darker once it's been highlighted. Now, water's reactivating and lifting some, but not all. There's quite a grayish tone that's left there, which I didn't see in the chromatography. It's interesting. Pen flush does nothing more than what water does, and the 1/3 bleach solution completely obliterates it. Now, it only took water to get it out of the pen, a very common theme here. The next writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia paper. As always, this is done not to see performance change, but to see tone change that goes on. This is a light blue on white, but on yellow, it becomes green. That's a green ink. If you work in a professional environment and are writing on yellow paper, this might be a problem for you. Something to be aware of before you find yourself in that situation. For the inks tested, the average viscosity is 2.5, and the realm of normal is 2.1 to 2.9. Platinum Blue has a viscosity of 1.73, so it's a wet ink. If you're interested in how the viscosity and all of that's done, then down in the description is a link to that video. But now let's take a look at White Lines paper. No bleeding, no ghosting, a little bit happens at the scrubby, but I never count that against them. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. Great performance on this paper because it is not fountain pen friendly paper. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub. I'm going to take back my no shading because the extra fine is definitely showing a lot of shading. I just got my glasses on. I'm old, so sometimes I forget to put them on, even though then what I'm looking at is blurry. We do get shading in the extra fine. We don't get it in the medium. Extra fine took 5 seconds to dry. Medium took 7. That medium tone is lighter than the stub, but nowhere near as light as the extra fine. Scrubby for both give us a tiny bit of color variation on the medium, though we didn't get it. More in the extra fine, and it is definitely there. And the smear test, you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time is 17 seconds, and the realm of normal is 13 to 21 seconds. Platinum Blue has an average dry time of 17 seconds, so it's average. The last writing sample is done on P. Berger paper. Not a particularly well-manufactured paper. It does have some bleed spots. None of these bleed spots come through and touch the next page. I don't think it stops you from using the back of the page, even though the back of it is unlined and it's a French ruled paper. So pretty good in general. We get no feathering, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do get some shading in the extra fine. Now the extra fine's a lot lighter than the stub. It's showing some very nice darker spots. Normally don't get much shading on this paper, but it's there. The medium shows a little bit of shading. You look at how quick it goes lighter to darker. Nice. It's also just a little bit lighter than the stub, definitely darker than the extra fine. Extra fine took 3 seconds to dry and the medium took 5. Scrubby for both show a tiny bit of color variation, shows itself much nicer in the extra fine. Smear test, you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like Platinum Blue, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a black ink by Diamine, their Jet Black. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of Platinum Blue? I find this a lighter tone than I prefer. It shades really well and is available as cartridges, which is convenient in a class or at conferences. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I prefer its darker tone from a wet fine. However, if you like the lighter tone and really want to bring out the shading in this ink, a medium flow, medium nib is going to be awesome, spot on. That's what you're going to want. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Ackerman's number 23.